There's nothing Paul likes as much as receiving feedback about the Joy of Cruising podcast. You can now send him feedback via the message link on each episode. He can't respond, but he may read your text on air. Welcome to the Joy of Cruising podcast with your host, award-winning author Paul C. Thornton, a weekly conversation with the amazing cruisers featured in the Joy of Cruising trilogy, comprised of The Joy of Cruising, Cruising Interrupted, and new release, The Joy of Cruising Again. Each book is a compilation of features about cruisers and cruise and travel personalities from around the world. It's the next best thing to cruising, hearing about cruising from the unique and diverse perspectives of Paul's amazing guests.
Hello, passionate cruisers. This is Paul, and this week on the Joy of Cruising podcast, I am delighted to welcome Cindy Williams. I wrote about Cindy in my first cruising book, The Joy of Cruising, in a feature called A Cruising Ministry. I have known Cindy, the epitome of a passionate cruiser, for virtually my entire life. We are related. However, when I started writing my first book about passionate cruisers 6 years ago, I hadn't seen or communicated regularly with Cindy in decades. She moved away from New York City in her teens, and our interactions became minimal. And then when Cindy embarked on a career with the United States Army, I completely lost contact with her. It was during Cindy's military career that her world traveler exploits began. During those years, Cindy and her husband Ken created an amazing cruising story spanning nearly the entire world. I found out about it by happenstance while I was writing The Joy of Cruising, and Cindy and Ken fit perfectly as prolific cruisers with fascinating stories, and I gladly asked them to be in the book. Funny story, when I told Cindy of my plan to write a cruising-oriented book, Cindy sent me, unsolicited, an itemized list of hundreds of destinations around the world that she and Ken had visited. Virtually every corner of the planet was represented. Every major island in the Caribbean, China, Australia, New Zealand, Iceland, Sweden, Russia, France, UK, Scotland, New Guinea, Chile, Peru, Ecuador, Dubai, Egypt, Israel, Alaska, Hawaii, Cuba, and much more. Today, I am excited to share with the Joy of Cruising podcast listeners Cindy's reflections of an amazing cruise. An Africa journey is at the very top of my bucket list. It won't match Cindy and Ken's, though. A 73-day Grand Africa voyage on board Holland America Line Zuiderdam. The cruise departed from Fort Lauderdale, and the entire itinerary is too lengthy to detail, but I can highlight a few stops. Canary Islands, Casablanca, Morocco, Petra, Jordan, the Seychelles, Zanzibar, Tanzania, Mozambique, Cape Town, South Africa, Namibia, Ghana, the Ivory Coast, Gambia, Dakar, Senegal. I'll post a complete itinerary in the show notes. Cindy, cuz, welcome to the Joy of Cruising podcast.
Well, thank you for having me.
So how you doing? How's you and your family doing?
We're doing good. All of us doing well.
Good. So before we discuss your dream trip, tell our listeners about yourself or yourselves. Where you're from, where you live, your background growing up, and then as an adult, whatever you would like to share about you and Ken.
Well, I was born in New York City on a Monday, but now I'm residing in Augusta, Georgia. And when I was just getting ready to turn 15, Miss Ida, our granddaddy's wife, passed away. And my mom, your auntie, picked us up, packed us up, and moved my brother Steve and I down to Virginia. And there I finished high school and enlisted in the military. And that's where, as you say, I got my first taste wet for traveling.
So talk about your first cruise. When and what ship?
Okay. My very first cruise was in August of 1991 on the Sea Escape. And that was to go over to a timeshare property that we had in the Bahamas. And they were just kind of like a big ferry, ones that would that you and I would take back in the day, like going over to Bear Mountain, but only bigger and more plush. And so we went over there. It normally took about 4 to 6 hours one way to get there. But while doing that, I noticed larger cruise ships that passed in and out of port and wondered what it would be like to actually sleep on the ship. So the next time I traveled over to my timeshare, I actually booked a room on board to kind of get the feel. I got a feel all right. That room was so small.
Excuse me, Sandy. Let me interrupt. You booked the room on, what was that cruise? What was that ship?
Oh, that ship was the Sea Escape, and they had other little ships out there that we would say were no name ships, but they were just like day cruises.
Right,
and they went back and forth to the islands, dropping the people off from the islands over here and dropping us people that own timeshares and stuff over there. It was a pretty long cruise, about 4 to 6 hours. We actually started cruising with the big boys on October 29th, 2006, to Freeport and Nassau in the Bahamas on the Carnival Sensation.
What were your first impressions of cruising when you got on, as you say, the big boys, Carnival Sensation?
Wow. When we got on there, it was like, it was phenomenal. It was phenomenal. It was day and night from the day cruises. Everything back then, especially back in the early 2000s, the ships were still doing like the over the top grandeur type of things. And everything was spot on. The food back then was like delish. And it was like so much freedom to do whatever you wanted to do.
So how soon did you cruise again after Sensation?
Well, at first there was some time in between cruises because it was like we were both working, my husband and myself, and we had to find time to get away to cruise. And of course, there was the children, they was growing up. So there was a period of several years between each cruise, 25th anniversary, and we took our first real cruise, our first real anniversary cruise, and we started loving it so much that then it started to be birthday.
What now? What was that on? What was that on, Cindy?
Well, I don't have my computer up, and I can tell you every cruise that I've been on, and you might have it there in front of you. But I can't tell you exactly what every ship was off the top of my head. There's been too many.
I'll check, but I don't know if you noted it as the 25th anniversary, but I'll see.
Yeah. Amen.
Okay.
But at any rate, then after that, we started doing birthdays. We started doing holidays. We started doing anniversaries. We started doing just because cruises. And
so of those, and it was dozens of great cruises, give us some highlights.
Okay.
Before the COVID shutdown.
Okay.
But when you started doing longer and nicer cruises.
That's right. My husband and I enjoyed cruising so much. There were so many places to go and things to do and see that we would go on so many cruises that we started noticing folks around. We would be so overwhelmed at all the different places we went to Japan, we went to China, we went to Sweden, we went to Germany, we went to so many different places. It's hard to keep it together.
I know you went to I know
Yes.
you went to India because I have some photos of you and Ken in my
Hmm.
book, The Joy of Cruising. You know, where you're dressed in the Indian garb and I think it was
That's
Mumbai, but I
Mumbai.
can't remember exactly.
That was sorry. And boy,
Yep,
that
yep.
was something to
So
get into too.
what is it that appeals most for you and Ken about cruising?
Uh,
What's the main attraction?
the main attraction is the cruise ports, of course. The things that can be done in these cruise ports. When you go cruising, it's like a different animal. When you go cruising, uh, you always know those that are new to cruising from those that are frequent floaters, as we we call them, or people who have cruised often. Because people that usually come on a cruise and those that we've noticed that go on the shorter cruises, they have walls up. They have walls up. But if you're a frequent cruiser, or if you just once you get on the cruise, you go with your walls down, and instantly everybody becomes friends and family. And that's what we love about cruising, because once you get on the cruise ship, everybody is there to have a good time. And it doesn't matter what skin color you are or where you come from. If you're there, you're in cruise mode and you're there to have a good time and enjoy one another.
Now, then things came to a halt because of the COVID cruising shutdown. I know that must have been difficult for you as much as your cruise. How did you spend your time? Did you gain any new pastimes, any new hobbies? Did you look at cruise videos?
Well, I was going out of my mind. When they told me that, COVID was here and this and that and the other, every time I looked around, I was trying to book a cruise. I had booked like maybe 20 cruises during the time
Wow.
everything was shut down. And every time I get the cruise booked, then they say, well, this is canceled, 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 canceled. And I was losing my
Right.
mind because I had the cruise bug and I needed to go. And
Yeah,
and
you sound like me.
yeah, yeah. I was losing it. I was like, I gotta get out. I gotta get out. But the Lord bless. The Lord
So
bless. And
so what was your first cruise back?
well, my first cruise back was on. It was two. It was November the 12th, 22. I'm 22, and it was a 20-day cruise on the Enchanted Princess, and we went all over. We went all over. We went to the Princess Keys, St. Kitts, St. Thomas, Dominica, St. Lucia, Barbados, Grenada, Curacao, Bonaire, and all kinds of other ones. We just really just scoured the Caribbean on our first time.
So so a lot of people, you know, who are passionate cruisers like yourselves, after the pandemic and cruising opened back up, you know, they, as you say, hit the ground running. Did you go on a lot of cruises? Did you have a lot of pent up demand, or did you ease back into it? How did you? What talk about cruises after COVID, leading up to the Grand Africa voyage that we're about to talk about?
Yeah, well, during our cruises after the pandemic, I had a lot of cruise ministry before the pandemic where anybody I saw that was downtrodden or sad or, you know, uh, that looked like they were about to lose it or anything, it was like the Lord had laid upon me to provide like a way of escape for them, to provide for them a break, a time to relax. They just needed a vacation, and I would invite them to go on a cruise with me, whether it was friends, family, some people that I just saw, and whether they could afford it or not. I'd say, come on, let's go. We just gonna go on a cruise, and that became my ministry. It was an unusual ministry, but it was offering people a break, offering people vacation. And it got to the place where I wanted to make sure that everybody in my immediate family was able to go on at least one cruise in their life, you know. So I'm thankful and happy to say at this point that that desire in my heart has been fulfilled, because I've been blessed to be able to have gone on a cruise with every one of my family members, my siblings, my children, my cousins, not my cousins, my siblings, my children, my grandchildren, and all of that, my nieces and nephews, all of them. I've been able to cruise with them independently and collectively as we went on our family cruise. And so now, since the pandemic, the cruise ministry has shifted, it's changed. And my husband and I would be teaching Bible study every sea day on the high seas. And so we had a large gathering that would come at 9:00 in the morning, every sea day morning. And they would sit down and we would study the word together. And that was such a wonderful time in fellowship and in love.
Well, was that something you arranged with the cruise line, or was that just a private gathering?
Well, you know, on Princess especially.
I mean, how did the word get out to the people? Weren't just people you knew, right? They were or anybody on the ship could come.
Anybody on the ship could come. And what was the beauty in Princess especially is they made time. If someone expressed an interest to be able to do these things when you first get on the ship, you express that to the front desk, and they make a time for you, and they designate a space for you. And we found out that on Holland America, they actually have a preacher, and they have a preacher from every denomination represented. So whenever anyone wants to have a worship service, they actually have a leader. And these schools, I was primarily the teacher, and everything. But the Lord blessed where everybody came together, everybody shared, and it was such a mutual love, respect, adoration, and fellowship that it was just mind blowing.
One other thing before we get to the Grand Africa Voyage, do you have a favorite cruise line of all? I mean, you've done so many cruises. Do you have a favorite cruise line, or you like them all?
I love them all. I love them all. The one that's my favorite one, the one that I prefer, is Princess. Now I've been on Royal Caribbean. I've been on I so many of them, it's hard to keep it all together. But I've been on Carnival. I've been on Azamura. I've been on all these different cruise lines. But my favorite one is Princess.
Do you have a favorite ship? On any across all lines? Any one ship that's your favorite?
Across all lines, and this is unusual because it's such a small ship. It's a teeny weeny ship, but it is the Pacific Princess. Now it has been decommissioned now, and they have a new Pacific Princess coming out, which will be a very big ship. But that ship was the ship we took our first world cruise on, and our second world cruise on, as a matter of fact. But it was so small, it was intimate, and everybody felt like family. You know, everybody felt like family. It was small enough that you could really get to know everybody.
You've done 2 world cruises.
Well, I've been around the world closer to 4 times. But
wow, we could have you on the show just to talk about that. Let's talk about the topic of the day. I call it, or not I call it, the itinerary calls it the 73-day Grand Africa Voyage. So what I can imagine, I mean, that's at the top of my bucket list, something like that, although it wouldn't be 73 days. what was you and Ken's motivation to go on such an amazing journey?
Well, when I was a kid growing up, I used to always like Tarzan and I like Daktari. And, Africa just seemed like such an amazing place. It seemed like it was so mystical. It seemed like, it was so deep. And it has always been in my desire to want to go to Africa. As a matter of fact, on our second world cruise, we were supposed to go to Africa. It had 9 places on the itinerary that were in Africa. But one day before we reached Tanzania, just one wake up before we were to touch foot on Africa, we got that dreaded call over the loudspeakers that said, "This cruise has been canceled." And I mean, it hit us in the pit of our stomach like a ton of
That
bricks.
was due to
That was
COVID.
due to COVID. We were one
So
day out.
you were one of those people who were on the ocean when cruising shut down.
That's absolutely correct. We had just left
Because
Australia.
in the book that I did after the one you were in, Cruising Interrupted, the whole first section was about people who were, or you could have been in the second book too, because it was people who were on the ocean when cruising shut down, and some amazing stories. And I'm sure, once again, that could be the topic of a whole nother podcast. What it was like being out there. I know one person that I had in the second book. No country would take her ship in. She called it a ghost ship. So I can imagine the stories you have. But okay, so you missed Africa on that world cruise. Wow, 9 stops.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but we were determined we were gonna get back out there. We had missed it, and it was like 3 years had gone by. 3 years had gone by, and I was searching and searching and searching for cruises that would leave from America and go to Africa, and it was like nothing. And I was about to give up, but then all of a sudden the Lord impressed upon me, said, "Look just one more time." And so I went out there because every other time there was nothing leaving from America going out there. If you had to fly to Africa to make any kind of trips around Africa, and I'm not lying. And I've done that. I've flown to other countries and caught ships and went around and flown to other countries. That's not my preference. I prefer to leave from America and be returned back to America. And dealing with customs and other countries, this and that and the other. I prefer to leave from America and let the ship be my country until I come home.
The last day of looking,
the Lord
you found
blessed me,
something,
and boom! It seemed like it had dropped out of the sky. It boom! There it was, a 73-day cruise aboard the Zuiderdam, the Holland America Zuiderdam, going all around the whole perimeter of Africa.
That's an amazing itinerary. I've been on some groups, Facebook groups, and what have you. Discussing Africa cruises, and like you say, it's what you found was rare, and this is the kind of thing that I'm looking for, although much more condensed for various reasons. But now, was this your first time on Holland America?
Yes, it was.
Okay, so let's start there. For those of us not familiar with Holland America, I have not been on Holland America yet, but I do have it booked. So I go on it go to the Panama Canal in February on the Rotterdam. And I've had some good guests. I've had two captains from Holland America, and I've had staff member, crew member, one of their most prolific cruisers. So I've had a lot of Holland America on the podcast. I just haven't booked it yet, or I have booked it, but I haven't cruised it yet. So I'm looking forward to that. So for those of us not familiar with HAL, first tell us all about Zuiderdam.
Okay, well, Zuiderdam is not the biggest ship in the fleet. It's actually an older ship. And Holland America Cruise Lines, they started way back in 1873, and they were part of the Netherlands. And they were actually responsible for a lot of the things that we're seeing in cruising today. They were the first that had the dining that broke down the barriers. It used to be first class would have everything, and second class and third class and stuff, they would have, meager stuff. Holland America came out first with equal dining facilities where everybody could eat the same food in the same level of excellence as first class could. Even though first class got their dining room in the front of the ship, everybody else could eat in the dining room in the rear of the ship, but it was straight across the same amount of class that they had in the serving, the same class that they had in the food. They had clear cross for everybody's dining. And they had their ships that were retrofit during World War I. They gave up a couple of their ships to be retrofit instead of being cruise liners. They became troop carriers in World War I. So they really had a very rich history that I actually discovered while I was on the ship. And that impressed me with them. That's something I've not experienced on any other cruise line. They were actually probably one of the oldest, if not the oldest cruise line. And they were actually breaking down barriers in cruising as they were going along. And the Zuiderdam, it was not the smallest ship and not the largest ship, but it was one of the smallest ships, primarily because of the itinerary. They had to get into ports that were not as big or large or modern as the ports that we normally are used to going into. And when I first saw the ship, it was like Holland America colors are kind of foreboding because they have a very, very dark navy blue with cream, white, and orange. And I'm used to seeing all the ships being bright white with light blue highlights on them, right? So I was kind of like, But when I stepped on board, my, everything changed. I mean, they had a crew that was bar none. Everything was done in excellence. I mean, when they did our laundry, they brought back our laundry in garment bags, snap garment bags, and our delicates they brought back in brown trimmed in gold wicker baskets, covered and sealed just perfectly, folded on the inside with white tissue paper. I mean,
Wow.
It was excellent. I fell in love with my room stewards.
Let me ask you: do you happen to remember who? No, this would this would have been last year. You sailed that, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I was getting ready to ask. I was going to ask you who the captain was, because as I mentioned, I've had two captains on the podcast, and I know in their careers they have sailed, they have captained the Zuiderdam, but they wouldn't have done it in 23. They retired. So okay,
Right.
okay.
Our captain was a hoot. Let me tell you, he was funny. Usually people come on the loudspeaker and says, "This is the captain speaking." Our captain came on and said, "Hello again, it's me." He was a hoot. He had jokes. He was very professional, but he was very personable and very approachable.
Mm-hmm.
He made the cruising feel like wow, like
Mm-hmm.
we're home.
Talk about the food.
Well, on every cruise lines they have these delectables all over the place and everything. I love food. That was one of the reasons why I went on the cruise, man. When you say food, and it's all you can eat all day long, man, that is marvelous. And they have something for everybody. They
Mm-hmm.
have something for everybody. If you just like burgers and fries, they got that. If you like tacos and enchiladas, they got that. If you like ramen or they got that. They've got everything. If you like fine dining, escargot, all these different things, filet mignon, they got, so many different things. You got that. And so I've always
So
loved the
let
food
me
on the
let me
ship.
ask you: are you and Ken specialty dining people? Do you ever try the specialty dining
We
restaurants?
have. We have been to several of the specialty dining restaurants, and they are all cool. They're always done up just a little bit more and all this and everything. But for me, I don't mind. Formal dining is good enough for me. You know what I'm saying? Specialty
Mm-hmm.
dining, hey, everybody who wants to go there, there's an upcharge to go on the specialty dining, and that's wonderful. But for me, I'm good with the regular formal dining. Or me, I'm also just really a Lido girl myself.
Okay, okay. So tell us all about the 73-day Grand Africa voyage. Give us the
All
highlights.
right. It was phenomenal. We went to Spain, Portugal, Casablanca. We went to Greece, Tunisia. We sailed through the Suez Canal to see the pyramids of Egypt, and we sailed and had lunch on the Nile River. We went over to Salalah, Oman, and we went to 26 ports of call in Africa. So it was.
What what was let me put you on the spot. What was the number one port
My number
for
one
you, in your
sport.
opinion?
There was a few of them. I
For
I like
for you, what was number? How about telling me what was number one for you, and what was number one for Ken?
okay. We liked na the land of Hakuna Matata. That was Nambia, I believe it was, or Tanzania. I get it confused now, but they were the land of Hakuna Matata. We loved it. They had so many things to see. They had uh that was where we got our first taste of real Africa, was right there in Tanzania, Nambia, all in that area there. The land of Hakuna Matata. That was one of my most favorite places. And that was the place where I shopped the most right there. They had art. Oh my Lord, art. In Africa, it looks like everybody is an artist. They either sculpt, or they sing and dance, or they paint, or they carve. They are the most. I've seen some of the most magnificent artwork there in Africa. My other place that I love the most would have been Ghana. Ghana, because everybody smiling in Ghana. Everybody loved you in Ghana. Everybody, we had the little children. They would run behind our bus, waving and smiling and everything. The children, they were wonderful. I had a picture of a little boy who, yes,
Look, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Finish that, and then I ask a question.
I have a picture of a little boy who followed me all the way back to my bus, and he just sat outside of my window, and he just smiled, and he put his hand up on the window, and I put my hand on his hand on the window. It just touched my heart.
Now, when I envision Ghana, I envision big city, skyscrapers and all of that. But what did you see that part of Ghana, or was yours more resort area of Ghana or inland Ghana? I mean, what did you see in Ghana?
That's what I liked about the cruise, because you got to see everything. You got to see the cities, and some of them are much like our cities. Maybe some of them were quite beautiful. The resorts were always off the chain, but you also got to see how people really lived. And what it was whenever you went on the shore excursions, everybody was just giving you what they got. They were giving you the best of what they got. And so they were giving it to you so genuinely. It was all, how could you say it wasn't anything but beautiful?
Now, Sonny, here's my challenge with, I told you Africa is at the top of my bucket list. I love cruising so much that I would prefer to go there on a cruise. My wife is not a cruiseaholic like I am. I suspect she would prefer to go there on a land trip, or if she had her choice, she would pick land trip. She likes cruising. She always has a good time, but it's just not all that she thinks about. My challenge with a cruise to Africa, also high on my bucket list, is a safari. And you can't do both on a cruise, right?
Oh, yes, you can. Oh, yes,
you can. You can do an excursion that allows you to get in a safari. Okay.
Oh yeah, we had planned to do we had wanted to do 7 safaris. We had them all picked out and everything. But by the time we got on the cruise, because see, we had booked the cruise, and then that war broke out, and so it was we canceled the cruise and said, no, it's a little too hot to go over there right now. But then I was like, Lord, I want to go. And so all of a sudden we got word that things had settled down. So we went on ahead and booked again. But by the time we booked that second time, most of the safaris were already booked up, But we did get to go on a seal and seal and a seal safari, but they had all kind of the pelicans would fly out of the sky and they would come and land on your boat. I mean, these pelicans were bigger than my arm span. They would come, and sometimes they'd be quite rude, and they just, with their wings, they just whop you in your head and stuff like that. As far as they were concerned, they ran the boat. And the seals come up out the ocean and jump up on your boat. And then they come waddling around on the boat, waddling around everybody looking. It was phenomenal. So we didn't get to go on all the deep in Africa safaris. If you want to book one of those, you need to book it before you go on your cruise. Because if you wait to get on the cruise, they'll be gone.
How long were the port stops? I didn't think, the reason I didn't think a safari would be a part of it is I thought safaris last too long relative to how long a cruise ship ports.
Well, they have them in different lengths. They have them depending on your port. If you're going to be in port for 2 days or more, they have those ports where you can do the 8-hour safaris. They have some people that got off in this part of Africa and they went on their safari, and they caught up with the ship 2 or 3 ports later and got
Okay.
back on. So it all depends
Okay.
on you, how much you want
So,
to spend, how long you want to be gone, and what's the condition of your body if you can actually take going out on safari, because that's roughing it.
so that's great. So it sounds like a cruise to Africa, you can incorporate your own land portions and still catch up to the cruise.
Yes.
I know a lot of people do world cruises where they only do a leg and they get off, they get on and they get off. So it might be, it might be 100 days and they do 40.
Yeah, that is
Okay.
true. That is true. On the African cruise, you can hop on, hop off as well. But they for us, like I say, I like getting on in America and then getting off in America. That way I feel secure. I feel cocooned. I feel protected. Because
Sure.
anything jump off out there, I want to know I'm as close to my cruise ship and we could cruise on up out. You see what I'm saying?
Right. So give us some more highlights. What was Ken's favorite place?
He liked it all. He really did. I think he liked man, I think it was in Gambia. Was it Gambia? We went to this place where they had students, and the students were there. They were homeless. So the school would take in all these young people and they would sit back and look at what they were good at. And they would hone them and train them in a skill. And they were into the arts. They performed magnificently for us on stage. We got to watch them doing their carvings, watch them doing their paintings live right there. These things coming into fruition before our very eyes. And to think they never let anybody's talent go to waste, whether it was in acting, whether it was in performing, whether it was in singing, drumming, whatever it was, they took that skill and they brought it up out of every student that came there.
So did the school provide housing?
Yes, they did. Yes, they did. It was a whole campus. It was a huge campus. And they didn't let anyone who wanted to come in fall to the ground. They made sure that they knew what that ability was in that person, and they perfected it or tried to bring it up as close to perfection as they could.
Was there much of a language barrier at the various port stops?
There was some. There was not a whole lot. Most everybody spoke English, but in some ports they spoke French. And the ports that spoke French, you found that there were very, very few people that spoke English. But that was the only thing. But our tour guides, they all spoke English. So if we ever had anything that we desired, they would go with us and make sure we had everything we needed taken care of.
Did you get an excursion at most stops?
Yes, it wasn't difficult at all to get an excursion. There was this one stop, Mamutzu. And we didn't have an excursion there. The cruise line didn't offer an excursion there. We were wondering why. Well, it was a very, very small place. It was a nice place, it was very nice. But we just hired a taxi cab, and that was no easy feat because they only spoke French in Mamutzu. So we there was 4 of us, me and my husband, and then 2 ladies that were on our ship with us. We got together and I kind of knew a little French from high school and all that kind of stuff. And when my translator, thank the Lord for my translator, we got together and haggled out a price, how much for, 4 hours. Just give us 4 hours, drive us around, let me see where you live. And they were like, okay. And so we went around, we went to the different places. We wanted to see all the highlights that they told us were available. So we just took our taxi, the cab waited for us while we went out and we saw and we did exactly what we wanted to do. And then we came back to the ship. And then there was a big market there where everything you could think of was there. If you wanted anything cultural or whatever, you could find it right there in this big, huge, ginormous market.
Mm-hmm. Now, of the ship excursions, what was your favorite?
Of the ship excursions, I think the one where we were on the boat with all the seals and the pelicans, and then we had Steven Seagal that dropped in. He was a seagull, and he would drop in on you, you know, and we would have if you wanted to, you could take a fish and hold it up, and Steven Seagal would come from the sky and snatch it out your hands, and the seals, they would be barking all around me. There were hundreds and thousands of seals. They looked out, they just covered. It was called Seal Island. And you just look out and there were seals as far as your eyes could see on the island all the way back. And they were in the water. And dolphins, they were in the water as well. And then the pelicans, of course, and the seals and the pelicans, they were all up on the boat. We were going, I don't know if I sent you the video, but we were going at a pretty good clip in the water. And this one seal was keeping up with us. I was amazed. I was right there. And he was almost able to jump over the barrier to get into the boat. I mean, he was like right there. That was such an exciting trip. And they fed us too. That's always a good thing. So be able to sail and eat and watch the wildlife. It was great. You had asked me about my favorite place. How could I forget? Ooh, we went to a Zulu village. You know, where Shaka Zulu lived?
What stop was that?
Durban, South Africa.
Okay.
And so we went to a Zulu village, and it was so much fun. That was the place where I held that Burmese python and that king.
Now I have that photo, right?
Yeah, you have the king cobra python, and the place where we went to, and we were actually able to pet the crocodiles that were in.
Now you weren't nervous to do any of that stuff?
What you talking? I was. As we were walking in, our tour guide was taking our group into the crocodile place. It was like the crocodile museum, and I thought we'd just go in and look through the fencing, and the crocodiles would be there. And then as I walked in, I'm like, that fence is broken down, and the wall was just like up to your thighs. I said, they can get out of there. And so I stepped away from the wall and kept walking. And all of a sudden you see, that one's loose. That one's out. And then you look around and beware. I'm like, oh my Lord, you know? And so I'm like, thank you, Lord, keep me covered. Following the tour guide and went through. And then they were able to say, well, they're going to give you some advice. You can actually pet them, but you can't pet them up too close to the head because they got reflex and they might whoop around and get you. And you can't pet them too close to the tail because they got reflex and they would whoop around and get you. So they let you know exactly where you could pet them and they would let you stroke them. But I'm like, whoa, all these things down there at my ankles. But you know what? By the time I got out and started breathing again, I realized that was one of the most fun times of my life.
Well, Cindy, what do you have? You and Ken have booked. I mean, my goodness, where can y'all go? I have this huge bucket list. And so I'm going on, I'm planning on checking things off in the next couple of years. I have, I think, 7 cruises booked. But you've done, many of the things that I aspire to do. So what do y'all have planned?
Well, at this time, nothing. At this time, nothing. Uh, we've been around the world a few times. We've seen just about everything that we wanted to see. And so our bucket list is just about ticked out. And besides, nowadays, the atmosphere is changing really rapidly around. So we decided that we need to cool our jets for a little while and kind of keep our finger on the pulse of the world for a little bit. And, besides, one of our prerequisites has always been, for traveling, it was to go to places we've never been, do something we've never done, see something we've never seen on a ship that we've never been on. And so at this point,
You kind of check those off. Now, let me ask you, have you ever been on a river cruise?
I've never been on a river cruise, and that's here in America. And so I'm like, yeah, that sounds pretty interesting because we tend to go everywhere else exploring and seeing the beautiful sights. But there's some pretty beautiful sights right here in America.
Yeah.
I'm interested, but I've checked it, I've priced it. Those things cost actually as much or more than a world cruise costs.
Yeah. We're going on our first river cruise
Mm-hmm.
in August, but it's not in America. We have to fly to France. So it's a 7-day river cruise in France, and then there's 3 additional days in Paris to do a Black History tour.
Uh-huh.
So that's going to be really, really nice. But you're
Very
right.
beautiful.
You can, it is, it is the most we've ever paid for a cruise by far. But something we it was on my, like I say, I'm in the process of doing some serious bucket list checking. So,
Mm-hmm.
and we even have, I know you said you like cruises that leave from America and go to where it's going. So we have a cruise next year. It leaves from outside of London, Southampton, and
Uh-huh.
goes to Norway because people keep telling us about seeing the fjords. So what I've been trying to subtly get across to my wife is that what we could do is take a transatlantic, from Miami to UK, and then get on the cruise, and she's trying to, and I'm saying, the cost of airfare is so high these days that,
May as well
you know,
cruise and enjoy.
and she's like, "Are you trying to slip in a cruise?" But yes, yeah, I am. But I also, I mean, I will, as we get closer. That one's not until fall of 25. I will seriously look and see if there is a transatlantic going to UK. Near the time that we're booked for the Norway cruise.
Mhm.
Because I mentioned this to another guest that I had on the show, and he did the same thing, except he was going from UK to Miami, and his real
Mhm.
reason for going to Miami was to get on the Icon. you know.
Mhm.
But he took a transatlantic across because the airfare was or the fare versus the airfare was very comparable. So I
Yes,
already have gotten, sort of motivation to deal with this. But it's not, like I said, it's not until well over a year away. So,
indeed.
but so do you have anything on your travel bucket list? I won't say cruise bucket list, just your cruise and travel bucket list. Is there anything that's out there for y'all to do or that you haven't done? So I know you may go back to some places, but what haven't you done?
Well, like I said, we've done an awful lot. We went and did zip lining, we did parasailing, we did if you go somewhere where they have it, the Boss underwater motorcycles where you go down on the water and that do something you never did before. You might be
Yeah,
a little too
we won't be doing that one. I know what you're talking about.
Loved it. I we get a whole new set of backbone when we go to these other
Now
places.
you don't have any photos of when you did that, do you?
Well, it's at that time they didn't have really good underwater cameras, but
Right.
yeah. So, but the memories are phenomenal. They're there.
Yeah.
So many. I've got a chance to pet so many different exotic animals, from baby jaguars. I've gotten to hold koala bears. I mean, it's my thing when I go to a different country. I like to pet the native wildlife.
Let me
That's
ask you this:
do.
Did you try when you went to Africa? So many stops in Africa. Did you try local cuisine?
Oh, all over the place. Everywhere we stopped, it was not intentional, but every stop that we made turned out to be a foodie tour. Everybody was feeding us, and I kind of, I kind of got the extra weight to prove it. But everywhere we went, they were feeding us. When we went to Durban, the Zulu village, they wanted to feed us. Look, everywhere we went, they spread some sort of a table before us. And when we were in Casablanca, everywhere you had to sample their native tea and their native pastry,
What
their
was
native dish that they wanted.
what was your highlight? What was your highlight of the food tasting?
I like the Casablanca. They had these pastries that were delectable. I loved it. And just going down the streets of Casablanca, seeing these huge brass and different kind of pottery and all this kind of stuff that was out there. It was really gorgeous. So much candy. Um, I I like their pastries there. And the teas, even without sugar, par excellence. Even with
Did you
sugar, the teas, they could hold their own with any other dish.
What's the most exotic dish you had? I asked this question of world travelers, which you are definitely one, and I've had some amazing responses. Not no pressure. I mean, if you didn't eat anything all that exotic, fine. But I got some exotic stuff for you.
Yeah, well, I would have to delve back. I don't think I'd be able to do that question justice. I've eaten a whole lot of stuff, but I just say that all of it was good, and all of it is good in the memory.
All of it was good.
Yes, all of it was good.
Good, good. Well, I can't wait, cause to replicate, most of your trip. I won't be petting any exotic animals, and I'm not going to be eating too exotically either. But I can't wait. By the way, did you ride any camels?
Oh, I not this trip. I didn't get on it, but I've been in when we went to Petra a while back. I rode the camels in Petra.
Uh huh.
We've ridden on elephants before, and we've ridden on oxes. and stuff
Wow.
like that in these different places that we've been. So I make sure I get on something while I'm in that place. We've been on donkeys, we've been on horses, we've been on just about anything you can think of. We done sat on it.
Okay.
We
Okay.
almost got a chance to ride on an ostrich, you know?
Wow.
Yeah, that I was looking forward to that, but
I would be nervous to do that. They look like they would break.
yeah, we got a chance to feed them, but but we didn't get a chance to get on them that day. That day, they were closing down a little bit earlier, so we didn't get a chance to do that portion of it.
Hmm. Well, Cindy, before we let you go, a couple of light uh, cruise questions, perhaps fun questions and then an oddball question. I say oddball in that it doesn't relate necessarily to cruising. So the first cruise question is, what's your favorite cruise food?
Well, my favorite
Not of this
food,
trip. I'm talking about of everything.
it's gonna sound crazy, but my favorite cruise food is ice cream and pizza.
There you go.
Ice cream and pizza, no matter where you go. If you can just give me some good old fashioned ice cream and some pizza, hey, I'm always saying there's a pizza on that ship with my name on it. And
Well,
it's really funny and really cool because I know we had everybody on the ship drooling because my husband, we don't do these little ice cream cups that they have laid out for you on the ship. My husband goes to the real bar out there on Lido deck. He gets one of those tall, chilled beer steins, beer mugs, and he gets them and we bring them up to the ice cream station and say, fill them up. And I mean, we put every different flavor, every different concoction we have, and we walking out, getting ready to go sit down and have our little confession and stuff, concession. I'm telling you, the people's out there, oh, that looks so good. Oh, where'd you get that? And I said, over there. All you gotta do is do this. We don't eat ice cream in these little cups. We get our ice cream in these here cups.
So you said pizza. Have you been on MSC yet?
MSD, the ship's cruise line. No,
Yeah.
haven't been on there yet.
We went on MSC for Christmas, and that was our first time on MSC.
What is
And
that? What is that cruise line all the way out? The full name.
I forgot. They're out of Italy. They have they're a very rich company because their main thing is cargo shipping.
Okay.
So I know the SC has to do with cargo shipping, but the cruise line is just a small part of their business. And what they're known for is they have very, very beautiful ships.
Mm-hmm.
But they have some challenges breaking into the American market, especially around customer service. Some say around food. But I will tell you, yeah, they did have, they have their challenges, but they have by far the best pizza I've tasted on any cruise line. So
Don't make me have to go there. Don't make me do it.
Oh, check it out. I mean, they're one thing they're known for is very, very low prices, relatively speaking, very low prices. So they're trying, to get into this market. But you're from New York. Their pizza tastes like New York pizza.
Oh no, my lord! No, you
Yeah.
did. Don't make
Yes,
me
it
have
does.
to put another cruise just to eat some of that pizza.
So if you did some reviews of MSC, they're going to be very mixed reviews, but they will be almost unanimous in terms of their pizza. So, all right. So that's your favorite cruise food. What's your single most memorable or funniest or even most embarrassing cruise or port experience?
Well, okay. My most memorable experience was when we were on this last cruise, and we had gone to Salalah, Oman, and we had a wonderful time in Salalah, Oman. Then we had to cross back. If you look at your map, your world map, we had to cross back in front of Yemen. We had to go on the waters in front of Yemen. And we woke up the next morning, our captain, he woke us up and he was like, well, we had a bit of excitement during the night. He said, while you were sleeping, we were chased by pirates. And I was like, oh, my Lord. He said, but with my excellent navigational skills and the sheer size of our ship and the power of our engines, we were able to evade and elude them. Okay? And it was like, oh, my God. While we were sleeping, we had been chased by pirates. And he woke us up early that morning. He wasn't usually coming on the loudspeakers in the bedrooms, during that time in the morning. And we found out we were watching the news about 2 days later. And if you had been watching the news, you would have seen this thing of a helicopter with people rappelling down on ropes onto a cargo ship and commandeering it, the Houthis. They were just 2 days later, they were commandeered by pirates. And I'm just thankful, I'm telling you about that group of people that prayed and we had worship and fellowship every C-Day. I was so thankful to the Lord because he had us covered. And I'm thankful they didn't think to try that maneuver on us. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. They tried to come on board with a boat. And we were able to outmaneuver them and get away. But that cargo ship, they just said, forget the boat. They're just coming down on the helicopter. And I'm like, wow. You Jesus, we were able to escape.
That's pretty memorable.
Yeah. But the funniest was when my husband, on the first night of our cruise, he got duped into going on stage with a comedian. And if anybody knows anything, you do not want to go up on stage with a comedian. And so after he got up there, that thing was so funny. They recorded it and put it on the loop on the ship. And it showed over and over and over for the whole 15 days that we were on that Hawaiian cruise. It showed for the whole 15 days. And by the time it was over, everybody knew my husband's name. We couldn't walk. He says, hey, I know you.
You don't happen to remember the comedian, do you?
No, I don't. I wasn't keeping notes on who was up there at that time. But I'm telling you, that thing was so funny. And I'm telling you, on a loop, you could see it 4 or 5 times a day. They would just play that on a channel on the television. And I tell you, just about everybody knew his name. You're Ken. Hey, Ken. How you doing? It was so funny.
The oddball question. So welcome to Cindy and Ken's friends and family who are listening. So share one thing, Cindy, that my listeners and your friends don't know about Cindy.
What they don't know, everybody knows that Cindy loves the Lord. What they don't know is that Cindy has a real adventurous side. Cindy really likes to go to off the beaten trail, off the beaten path, and I love animals. That's one thing they may not have known. That's why everywhere I go, I've held these ginormous turtles, I've had birds, I had falcons on my head and on my shoulders and on my arms. I mean, everywhere I go, somehow or another, it manages that I have to have some sort of contact with the wildlife of that region.
Thank you. Well, Cindy, thank you for coming on the Joy of Cruising podcast. And all the best to you and Ken. And as I like to say, we'll see you on the ocean.
Bon voyage.
The Joy of Cruising and Cruising Interrupted, each $16.99 plus shipping, and new release, The Joy of Cruising Again for $18.99, can be ordered at the link on thejoyofcruisingpodcast.com. For each of the 3 books, use the discount code Joy of Cruising Podcast and get $4 off. The Joy of Cruising books are also available at Amazon. Order the ebook at Amazon or your favorite online retailer. Stay in touch by joining the Joy of Cruising Podcast Facebook group or following the Joy of Cruising Podcast on Instagram. We're constantly adding new shows. Please leave a review and tell a friend about us. We hope you enjoyed this brief escape to the ocean. See you next week.